Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our Clallam EDC Coffee Chat, Coffee with Colleen. We appreciate you joining us, and we are thrilled to have Bill Wells from Department of Natural Resources, the regional manager of our area, join us today. He's going to educate us about what happens at for DNR, their processes. He, of course, is not a policy person, but rather an implementer, a forester. And I'm sure we'll have lots of questions for him. But before we kick this off, I'm going to ask that you keep yourself on mute so we don't pick up background noise. And if you have any questions, we like to keep this fairly interactive, so you can either put your question in the chat and I'll try to ask it when there's a pause, or alternatively, you can raise your hand and you can ask the question of Bill. So with that, Bill, I've allowed sharing screen, so you can go ahead and share your screen, and welcome and thank you once again.
Well, thank you for the invite. Appreciate everyone showing up this morning to listen. I want to say good morning to Commissioner Johnson and Connie Bouvet and Ed Bowen. I see some people that I interact with quite often, so I'm happy to see that they actually want to listen to me again. So I'll start with just a short introduction. I grew up mostly on the Kitsap Peninsula, graduated Bremerton High School. I'm an Army veteran. I'm a graduate of the University of Washington with a bachelor's in forest management. And then I went back to school a few years ago and got my master's in natural resources from the University of Idaho. I have worked with DNR since 2003. All of that except for 1 year has been here in Olympic region. I've lived in Forks, have since 2003. And my experience with DNR is varied, mostly on the state land side. I was a silviculture forester for my first 8 years. Then I managed the Coast District of Olympic Region as the district manager for 12 years. That includes management of 287,000 acres, including the entirety of the experimental forest. I did 1 year in an acting role as Forest Resources Division Manager in Olympia. And then I've been very honored to be in this position representing staff of Olympic Region since December of 2023. So again, thank you for inviting me and for coming to this presentation. This is a new presentation. Let me see if I share the right one. Hopefully you're just seeing the DNR logo at the moment.
Yes.
Yes. It's a new presentation, and really coming for this chat gave me and my leadership team an opportunity to put a slideshow together that really tries to show everything that DNR does on the landscape. So I'd like to start out first with just an overview of DNR. There are 6 DNR regions. The DNR headquarters is in Olympia. As you can see, the Olympic region covers the majority of the peninsula. That's Jefferson County, Clallam County, and parts of Grace Harbor. And our headquarters building is in Forks, where I'm at this morning. Sorry, I got my notes on papers in front of me, and so you'll see me flipping back and forth. The Olympic region includes 371,000 acres of state managed lands and protects approximately 1.5 million acres across Clallam, Jefferson, and the northwest portions of Grace Harbor counties. And I won't read everything that's on the presentation, but I'll try to hit the highlights. Olympic region is staffed by approximately 130 permanent employees, 3 non-perm, and 37 seasonal staff. We also host 15 division employees. So these are employees that their supervisors are out of Olympia. I do want to spend just a little bit of time on the right side of the PowerPoint here. The region is divided into 3 sections. So Jill DiGianni is our assistant region manager for business and operations. That includes all the shared services, IT, accounting, facilities, warehouse, fleet, and radio.
Bill,
Yes.
real quick, someone is having a tough time hearing. Can you maybe get closer to the microphone?
Sure. Is that for
That's
everyone?
better.
Okay.
Yes, I think so. Yeah,
Okay. Sorry for that.
that's all right. Thank you.
Our state lands assistant is Drew Rosenbaum. He manages natural areas, recreation, rights of way, leasing, transactions, silviculture, the experimental forest, timber sales program, roads, and our wildlife biology. And Jordan Hamrick is our assistant region manager for wildfire and forest practices. So obviously he manages wildfire, forest practice, our forest resilience, which I'll give a brief overview of here in a minute, our Olympic camp, our mechanics, and our reception and dispatch. So quite the array of activities that occur within the region. Our work centers are spread across the map there. Our, obviously, as I've said a couple times now, our headquarters is in Forks. That's where the majority of staff work out of. Port Angeles is our second largest work center. We have staff from all programs that work out of there. Chimicombe, our center location, is primarily forest practice staff and fire staff, although our state land staff do use that on occasion. The Olympic Correctional Center is where we have 8 forest crew supervisors and 2 camp managers that run currently 8 incarcerated crews. They perform duties such as numerous silviculture activities, planting, thinning, brush control, but their primary duty is to fight fire. And then our Aberdeen location is a leased location for our fire staff and forest practice and resilient staff.
So, Bill, we have another message in the chat saying they're still having trouble hearing you.
Okay, I do lots of meetings from here and I've never had that issue, so I'm not sure if I just try to speak up, will that help?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thanks so
No
much.
problem. If I start yelling too much, please let me know not to do that as well. The next slides are just again going over our locations. The Forks headquarters building is where we have our administrative staff. We have seasonal barracks for our wildfire staff, storage units, maintenance, mechanic shop, conference center. And we also lease buildings to the U.S. Forest Service, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. Is that sounding better?
It sounds fine for me.
Okay. Our Port Angeles Work Center, this is just a picture of our fire garage plus our surveyors work on the left side of that building. We have multiple buildings there for staff. Our work center, that's a picture of a newly completed fire engine garage, just completed last year. And then the picture on the right is the fire station that we lease from Grace Harbor Fire District number 2. Our Olympic Correctional Camp Staff use the one-story office building pictured on the left there. We also have other buildings where we have metal storage, sew shop, mechanics, some additional office buildings, and a tree cooler for planting. So a little bit more of our business and operations. Again, when you think of a state agency, oftentimes you think that the shared services are all centralized. And we do have centralized services in Olympia, but within our own region, we have our own finance and budget, human resources, our information, our IT, our phones, radio, facilities, warehouse, and fleet. So all the things I went to forestry school for, now I'm in charge of. We have radio sites in Blinn, Striped Peak, Ellis, Octopus, and Scar Hill. Okay, so everyone that really wants to hear about the state lands management, and so I'll share a couple slides describing how they came to be. So the Enabling Act of 1889, when Washington became a state, we were granted state lands to manage for trust beneficiaries. We refer to those as our RMCA lands, our federal trust lands. Those are the common names that you'll hear. Those include on the left there, the K through 12 Common School Trust, the Ag School, University Trust, Capitol Building, Normal School, Scientific School. Our State Forest Land Trust, we'll call these our county lands, our O1 Trust, or our FDA lands. They were originally privately owned forest lands, forfeited to counties in the 20s and 30s due to unpaid property tax. These lands were subsequently, the counties asked the state to manage them for their benefit. Again, I just went through the trust, so I won't restate them. Other than to say the scientific school is Washington State University, same with the Ag School. Normal School Trust is Eastern, Western, Central universities in the Evergreen State. So our management is guided by the Board of Natural Resources. The board's comprised of 6 members, including the Commissioner of Public Lands, Superintendent of Public Instruction, the Dean of Washington State University's College of Agricultural, Human, and Natural Resources, the Director of UW School and Forest Resources, and the Governor designee. There's also a county designee who is with us today, currently Plum County Representative Randy Johnson. The board has several responsibilities. They approve trust land timber sales, approval of sales, exchanges, purchases, trust lands, and they establish the sustainable harvest level. And the board meets the first Tuesday of every month. Adopted in 1997, our Habitat Conservation Plan is an agreement between the state and the federal services on management of over 1.8 million acres. At its core, the HCP has 4 detailed conservation strategies: marble murrelets, northern spotted owls, riparian dependent species such as salmon and bull trout, and uncommon habitats. Through these strategies, protections are provided for additionally unstable slopes, old growth forest, and uncommon habitats. Our current estimate is that over 48% of DNR managed lands in Western Washington are deferred from harvest for these protections. So the Habitat Conservation Plan is an agreement with the state and the services, but the policy for sustainable forest is our DNR policy that we have to follow. It sets long-term sustainable management of forest state trust lands, reflects department practices and other changes, expectation of a continual flow of economic, ecological, and social benefits. And it divides the sustainable harvest calculation into 20 individual units, of which Olympic Region has Clallam, Grace Harbor, Jefferson County sustainable harvest units, and the Olympic Experimental State Forest. So the sustainable harvest calculation is a 10-year plan, but the analysis is done on what would the impacts be over 100 years. It's a model that looks at all of our policies and procedures and tries to come up with a sustainable harvest level that maximizes revenue for the trust. Our timber sales program has a current deliverable of 42 million board feet for our county lands, 76 million board feet for our federal trust lands. We average 6.2 million. That average is a 10-year average. Current $6.2 million to Clallam County. Our RMCA average is 26 million, and you can see Jefferson County averages $1 million. I do
And
want to
can you say again what RMCA stands for?
RMCA is the federally granted trust. So that's the K through 12 common school trust. It's all the trusts that we manage that were federally granted in the Enabling Act.
Okay, thank you.
I do want to mention here, we didn't put in the slide, but we manage the county revenue on a yearly basis for them, and we did close out 2025 producing $9.1 million for Clallam County this year. So exceeding the 10-year average by a substantial amount.
Okay, and was that when you say 9 million for the county, that also includes all the junior taxing districts, is that right? Because it goes to them and then they distribute to junior taxing districts?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We try to do as much outreach as we can. That's why I'm here this morning. We try to attend, the West End or Port Angeles Business Associations. We've done a number of presentations at the junior beneficiaries when asked. The Clallam County Revenue Advisory Committee, we attend on a regular basis. We also meet with Clallam and Jefferson County commissioners quarterly. Our silviculture, their deliverables, we plant, and these are all approximate numbers, but 7,600 acres per year, perform site prep on 5,800 of those, veg management on 7,000 acres, and we currently pre-commercially thin 3,800 acres per year.
What is vegetation management? Would that be like getting rid of Scotch broom?
That would be included. Yep.
Okay.
So typically when we talk about site prep, where it's mechanical or an herbicide treatment, typically an herbicide treatment to kill competing vegetation or invasives, either prior to planting. Well, prior to planting is the site prep. Veg management is when we do either an herbicide release treatment, typically at 3 or 5 years old, to release the trees from competing vegetation, or we slash the vegetation to allow the trees to get above them and continue to grow. And then pre-commercial thinning is when we thin trees that don't have a commercial value, But because of the heavy natural regeneration that we have on the peninsula, mostly western hemlock, we'll end up with 1,200 trees per acre. And we'll thin that back to typically 300 trees per acre to allow those trees to grow more vigorously.
So one question actually for everyone here. As Mitch wrote, I've enabled captions at the bottom of the screen. And so if you select uh, show captions, you should be able to see it. Or maybe everybody just sees it right now. I'm not sure. But Lori and Darlene, are you able to see the captions now?
The captions?
Yes.
I can see the slides.
Okay, and underneath that, there's captions showing what's being said. It's writing it in real time.
Oh,
So
no, I do
yeah,
not see that.
okay, at the bottom, you should have a button that says show captions. If you scroll down, and if you click on that, then that will, it'll, just like on your TV, it'll show
Mhm.
what is being said.
Thank
And if
you.
you say and ah, it shows that too, I'm noticing. Okay, thanks. Sorry for that break there, Bill. Go right ahead.
No, thank you. I needed drink of coffee. So continuing with our state lands management, we maintain approximately 2,600 miles of road that includes over 250 bridges. This last summer, actually 2 summers ago, there's a new bridge over the East Fork Dickey, which is out here on the west end. We maintain 10 campgrounds right across the region, 60 miles of trails, including mountain bike, hiker, horse, and ORV. And we also manage multiple natural areas. And I won't go through the whole list, but currently Dabob Bay was recently expanded. We do yearly tribal meetings where we talk about our interactions on the landscape, our access agreements, our TFW, our timber, fish, and wildlife process. As I mentioned before, we manage the Olympic Experimental State Forest that was established with the HCP. It includes riparian validation monitoring. There was the status and trends monitoring. And then most recently, the T3 experiment, which included 13 timber sales, 70 million board feet of timber. And within those sales, we had research prescriptions. But what's unique about this is that it was done at a landscape scale. So most research is done in small acres. But this was done over a 2,000 acre chunk of land. Some of the experimental cell layout included habitat restoration, different alder and cedar rotations, ethnoforestry, and complex early several prescriptions. Okay, I'm gonna transition from state lands to some of our other programs. And so I'll just start with a statewide overview. The state does outreach for forest health through workshops and classes, Wazoo extension programs, field days, trainings, and site visits, and lots of programs with our universities. Obviously, with our neighbors as well, the Forest Service and our private forestry partners. For forest health, and I'll get into what we do specifically in the region, but we have a cost share program that really is focused on silviculture activities like pre-commercial thinning, pruning, brush control, slash disposal. This is for forest health, but also to mitigate fire risk. So in Olympic region, this was established in 2022. We have a relatively small staffing, currently just 3 people and 1 vacancy in the program. But even though it's a small program, they've already been able to have a huge impact on the landscape. 60+ cost shares processed annually, over 500 landowner contacts, and that's equated to $125,000+ annually to small forest landowners to do these actions on their land. And then there are also the grant dollars. We do an additional $250,000 of pass-through. Wanted to give just a statewide overview of the 2025 fire season. Again, I'm not going to read everything on here. I'll hit some of the highlights. 31 different aircrafts utilized, 691 firefighters statewide, used resources from 22 states. There were just under 76,000 acres of and burned, which was a 30% decrease from 2024. And when we say DNR acres burned, that's DNR acres of protection. So we're not talking the state lands burning, but the acres that DNR protects. 1,100 fires, 660 of those in Eastern Washington, and 440 in Western Washington. So statewide total, this would include all the lands out there, 1,800 fires, 221,000 acres. Again, 76,000 acres of that of DNR jurisdiction. 2025, although these are still costly and impactful fires, which we would like to reduce well below that. That number was below the 10-year average, and our success rate did increase in keeping these fires smaller in nature. No matter what the weather conditions are, it always takes an ignition for a fire to start. And unfortunately, we had reported 53 arson fires in 2025.
So Bill, just looking at that map, I know that it's much drier on the east side of the state, but why is it that there aren't the proliferation of fires in the southeast portion of the state like there is in the northeast portion?
Yeah, I would say that there are, if you look at a map for 2024, there were more fires in southeast Washington than in northeast. And so it again, fire is really weather dependent, fuel dependent, and then the ignitions. And so fortunately for most of southeast Washington, there weren't as many fires, but there were unfortunately some very devastating fires as well in southeastern Washington. And so it's not always the number, and it only takes one fire to impact a community. And so we really strive to keep all fires under 10 acres in size. Fortunately, with 1,800 fire starts, it's just not possible to stop them all. And so I always like to emphasize you can't have a fire without an ignition. And so we all play a role in that. And so being very aware of of,
Got it. There's two questions in the chat. The first one is from Roy Morris. How do we find more information about the schools program?
I'll need a little help. What do you mean the schools program specifically? Money that's generated or?
Roy, do you want to expand on your question?
So Roy's curious about what dollars are available for kids in schools. Is that, we heard the term about working in schools. Program
No,
for kids in schools.
no, what I was trying to articulate is that we generate money for schools actually in a few different ways. We have the Common School Construction Fund, which is part of our RMCA federally granted trust that produces revenue for statewide school construction. We also produce money for schools through our management of our county lands, our FDA lands. They are a junior, the schools are a junior beneficiary for the counties. And then revenue is also created through an excise tax that is charged on every timber harvest. That's private landowner, small or large, and the DNR. And so those funds all make their way to the schools in different ways. One thing that I'm very proud of, and this isn't in the presentation, but since you asked the question, like I said, I've lived in Forks for 23 years, raised my daughters here. They went to the Forks Quaid Valley School District from preschool through graduating. During that time, in part using DNR funds, the biomass heater was built. A new Forks High School was built. The Forks Stadium and the bleachers, new restrooms, all of that was built in large part due to funds generated through DNR land management. And so it's something that's very impactful to those of us that work with DNR. It's a large reason why we continue to work with DNR because of the impact we have in the communities that we live in.
Great, thank you.
Thanks so much. That's great.
Terrific. Ed Bowen asked, did DNR lose any trust land forests, trees in the Bear Gulch fire?
So that fire was managed with our South Puget Sound region. So I wasn't directly involved, but I believe it was a very small number of acres of DNR protection. I don't believe there was any state lands that were lost, but I would have to verify that, Ed. I can follow up and get an answer to you for sure. But I believe it was primarily federal lands that were burned, if not all.
Great, thank you. Paula Hunt asked, do you anticipate the relatively mild winter having an impact on wildfire risk on the Olympic Peninsula this year? How are you preparing?
So we're preparing the way that we always do. Right now, we're advertising for all our seasonal positions. Interviews have actually started, I believe, last week. It's hard to predict in January what the fire season's going to be. DNR does use a lot of predictive weather services, but I believe those typically are available to us in later in the spring, April, May time periods. The lack of snow in the mountains is always concerning for areas that are fed from the melting snow. We just went through 2 weeks of beautiful weather, but also incredibly dry. But the reason I say it's difficult to predict is because right now I can hear the rain pounding on the window behind me here in Forks. And so, we might have had 2 dry weeks and it might pour rain and snow the rest of the winter and spring. And so it's really hard to tell at this point.
Great. Thank you. And then one more, actually, it's a two-part question. If I can continue on this trend of going through questions in the chat. What has been the impact of the legacy forest designation on forest management? And how old are the legacy forest trees in terms of years? That's from Paul Gottlieb.
So there has not been a designation of legacy forest. And I don't really, I'll share what I can share. DNR has been sued 30 plus, maybe 40 times on our management of what has been called legacy forest. DNR so far has prevailed in all of those lawsuits that have come to fruition. There has also been a commissioner's order earlier this year that told DNR to identify 77,000 acres of structurally complex forest and to evaluate those for alternative forest management other than our typical variable retention harvest, which is DNR's equivalent to a final harvest. But there, at this point, other than identifying those acres, in the pause, there was a 6-month pause while the commissioner was learning more about DNR. It's hard for me to quantify an impact. And what the commissioners stated is that, once we identify those, that the sustainable harvest calculation for Western Washington will be where policy decisions are made. The Board of Natural Resources will make those decisions. And so until such a time there's been a policy change, I don't know how to quantify it. And so obviously with the pause, there were sales that were delayed. And so the auction dates were delayed. But as I said, in 2025, we still produced revenue for Clallam County above the 10-year average. And so I'm sorry I can't answer that more directly.
Thank you. We have more questions in the chat, but I'll let you continue with your slides and we'll get to those in a bit.
Okay. Yeah, we're nearing the end.
Okay.
So this is an overview of our fire staff. Olympic Region has 9 permanent fire staff. And then, as I said, 37 seasonals that we hire every year. It's a picture of all of them because this is what they would like, is to be showcased in a recorded video. Uh, 1168, House Bill 1168, which was passed a number of legislative sessions ago, had a large impact on fire management here in Olympic Region. It created 2 wildland fire management supervisor and 2 wildland fire management specialist positions, 1 in Forks and Port Angeles. We've added a 3rd engine to Grays Harbor and now have 3 staffed. And it also allowed us to have our own heavy equipment program in the region. So we have a full-time operator. We have a dozer and an excavator for fire protection purposes. And that excavator also has a brush cutter attachment, which is important here. So 1168 funding is something of note right now. The commissioner has been just doing all he can to have our 1168 funding restored in this current legislative session. It does have a large impact on our firefighting ability and also our forest health, forest resiliency programs. Even though we're mixed around the Olympic Peninsula, from rainforest to rain shadow. Some areas obviously have higher fire risk than others. But we have less than the rest of Western Washington. Still, unfortunately, there's been a number of large fires over the last 20 years in Olympic region. This slide is really just to illustrate that, we still, even living here, have to make sure that we're very careful with how we interact on our landscape and prevent ignitions anywhere. When it comes to fuels for fire, Olympic Peninsula has got more fuel than anywhere else, meaning we have a lot more trees. Luckily, we haven't had the heat with the ignition at the same time, but as Bear Gulch fire last year shows, when those conditions are right, fires can grow quite large and burn with tremendous impact. Our wildfire staff do a ton in the community. Yearly, over 15 elementary school visits around the region with Smoky Bear, 20 different community visits outside of those elementary school visits with Smoky, 10 career fairs around the region, present on fire-wise and wildfire-friendly neighbor topics, and conduct home assessments throughout the year. We facilitate multiple fire trainings for our staff, but also with the local fire districts. The S-130, 190, these are some of the basic fire training courses. And then the WCT is the what we call the PAC test. It's a requirement, physical fitness. Fire refreshers, we do those annually. Facilitate at the Western Washington Fire Training Academy in North Bend annually. And as you can see there, from 2018 to present, Olympic region, 961 red cards. That's the card that shows your fire status, what you're able to what duties you're able to perform on fire. And as I said at the beginning, we have our own dispatch center here in Forks. Dispatcher 4, 2 dispatcher 3s, and a career seasonal. It's one of our 37 non-perm positions. They provide radio and phone coverage for the region, dispatch, our resources, and the fire service provide for all incident responses for DNR across the region. Our camps program, we have 9 forest crew supervisor positions. There are 8 of those currently filled. We train 150 plus incarcerated individuals annually. We run a sew and saw shop, small engine repair. And our sew shop is creating the PPE and equipment for our fire cache. So we're supplying fire equipment statewide. Our camp crews plant approximately 2,000 acres per year, over 700,000 seedlings scheduled for this year.
Wow.
Form pre-commercial thinning and the veg management that we spoke to earlier. But a number that is always most impressive to me is that in 2025, our camp crews provided over 125,000 meals to firefighters across the state. So they are always a welcome sight at fire camps across the state. They produce and provide incredible meals to our firefighters. And then they respond locally as our initial attack crews. So they, are mostly doing lines around fires for us on the peninsula. So we also implement our statewide forest practice program. Everyone that does timber harvest is required a forest practice application that's approved. That includes our state lands management. This includes repair and protection, the harvest, reforestation, any activity conducted on or directly pertaining to forest land and related to growing, harvesting, or processing timber. It's a collaboration really between the natural resources, Department of Ecology, Fish and Wildlife, tribal and local governments, landowners, and public interest organizations. We have one district manager, 2 natural resource specialist 4s, 6 specialist 3s, and then office staffs of 2 natural resource specialist 1s. Process over 350 forest practice apps annually. The WTMF is the water type modification forms. That's for stream typing on the landscape. We facilitate monthly TFW meetings and have 500 compliance field reviews.
What's TFW, Bill?
It's timber, fish, and wildlife.
Okay.
And I went through those last slides as fast as I could because I know you had questions and we're getting down to the last 10 minutes. So that's my presentation for you this morning, and I'm more than willing to answer any more questions.
Great, thank you. We have 6 questions in the chat, so I'm going to get to those. First, if DNR gets the additional fire dollars it's asking for from the legislature, what sort of activities will that help in the Olympic region?
So you stopped sharing for me, so I don't have to figure that
Yeah.
out. Okay. So what would Olympic region get specifically?
Yes.
Right now, our 1168 funding, as passed last year in the lead session, and then as proposed in the governor's budget, is a reduction. In the lead session last year, DNR was given, I believe, $60 million of the 125 that it was originally supposed to receive under the 1168 bill. And so if we do not receive that money, it could result in having to reduce staff. That decision of which staff, where, how across the state certainly has not been made. But with a reduction of half the funding of 1168, reduction somewhere would have to be made. So what we're asking for is to have that funding restored. That would maintain all the resources that we have in wildfire and forest resilience across the state. Without it being restored, cuts would have to be made somewhere. So this isn't an additional ask. This is
Okay. Got it. Paula asks, you had mentioned 9.1 million in timber revenue to Clallam County in 2025. Can you clarify, is that total for federal, state, and county trust lands? Can you break out the revenue for just county trust lands in 2025?
Yeah, that's just Clallam County. That's the revenue produced for Clallam County.
Okay. So there's different types of trust lands, but that's all the different types of trust lands in Clallam.
No, that's just the O1, that's our FDA lands managed for Clallam County.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Darlene asks, how many aquatic DNR lands are there in Washington State and on the Olympic Peninsula? And what is the status of talks between Rayonier and DNR regarding removing poles from the Rayonier leased area?
So I'll be able to give it my best shot, but unfortunately, this won't be a satisfying response. The DNR Olympic regions, or all the regions, we manage the uplands. So we have a separate aquatics division that manages aquatic lands across the state. These include shorelines, and riverbeds. I could not even venture a guess of how many acres or square miles or how they manage that, but it would be the shorelines and aquatic beds across the Olympic region managed by the aquatics division. As far as the cleanup site at the Rainier site in Port Angeles, I was fortunate enough last year to attend a tour with the commissioner and many community members and talk about that site, but I am not directly involved in it, and so I do not know the current status of that site.
Got it. Thank you. Can you describe the Firewise and Wildfire Friendly Neighbor programs?
I at a very high level I can. So our fire staff or our forest resiliency service foresters can come to a house or a community. We really love it when communities ask to be evaluated, and we will look at all the things within that community that could be mitigated to reduce the risk of fire. And so that would be, thinning some trees or doing some pruning, what types of vegetation, where, wood is stored near houses. They'll talk about ingress and egress on roads for access and other things. So it's really just an evaluation of if there was a fire there, what would we be facing? And then also what are things that the community can do to improve that situation?
Got it. Thank you. So Commissioner Beauvais says, speaking as the chair of the county's Revenue Advisory Committee, thank you again to you and the DNR staff for your work and dedication to our forests that the Olympic region manages. There has been recent theft of wood and separately misdemeanor physical obstruction of harvest work. Would you speak to how these criminal activities are managed by DNR?
Yeah. So we are fortunate, and this is going to sound like I'm being sarcastic and only in one aspect of it. We're fortunate to have two law enforcement agents, police that are DNR law enforcement that work in the Olympic region. The sarcastic part of that is, 1.5 million acres of protection, 371,000 acres of state land spread across the peninsula is almost impossible for two police officers to manage. All I can say, I can't say anything on ongoing law enforcement activities. And so, there are activities that have occurred where our law enforcement's been involved and they take cases. They have to build cases and take those to prosecutors, and that process is really not for me to know, and definitely not to share where they're at. What I can say is that our police officers are always actively looking for wood theft and other abuse on the landscape, and have been successful in catching numerous people across the landscape and even successful in having some of those be prosecuted. So very proud of the work that our law enforcement does.
Great. Commissioner Bove also says the RAC, the Revenue Advisory Committee, remains concerned about the pause sales. Can you verify the timing of these sales moving forward and if there are any changes in the acres to be harvested as a result of the pause?
Connie, I would say, I don't think there's acres change because of the pause. I will verify that. I'll verify that with Drew and have that for you at the next, RAC meeting. But off the top of my head, I don't believe there was any acres that were changed in the pause sales because of the pause. But again, I'll verify that. And then what was the other, there was a second part there, I think.
And have there been any changes in the acres to be harvested as a result of the pause?
Oh, no. So, sales, and this is difficult for people to understand, and I know Connie does. This comment isn't for Connie, but just in general, when we go from planned sales to what the final configuration of sale is, those numbers always change because the plan is, it's really a blob on a map, and it's the work that happens in the field where we get down to final harvest acres. And so, if you compare planned sales to sales that we are offering for auction or sold, there's always going to be a difference in those acres. But I do not believe there was any change in those acres because of the pause.
Okay, so we have 4 questions left in 3 minutes. How effectively does DNR currently check on whether permittees actually follow their permits and regulations?
For forced practice applications,
Yes.
that's a big part of their job. And so they're out there every day, visiting sites. And so very proud of the work that our forest practice staff do across the landscape.
Okay, I'm going to jump. There was a thank you from Roy about the Olympic Natural Resource Center and Dr. Borman's outreach. Dale Jarvis asked, do you have any thoughts on how DNR forest management practices might change if the legislature were to change the funding model to replace revenue from timber sales with other revenues?
So I don't believe I believe they're referring to the Ecosystem Services Bill. I don't believe it is changing it from one to another. It's allowing DNR to monetize those ecosystem services, including carbon. Right now, DNR doesn't have the ability to produce revenue in those ways. If there, so I don't think the question is, I can't answer it in that what would change if we were to switch from one to the other. I think if we had the ability to produce revenue in other ways, I think that adds to the toolbox of ways to produce revenue.
Okay, thank you. Paula has a follow-up question about her 9.1 million timber revenue that goes to the county. She says, as I understand it, counties receive 75% of that trust land revenue and DNR receives 25%, which means the total timber revenue for 2025 was around 12 million. Is that correct?
I would have to talk with my state lands assistant. I believe the $9.1 million is what the county received. And so, I think that would be after the 25% DNR kept for management, but I would have to verify that.
Okay. And Bill, would you mind putting your email in the chat? So if anybody has any follow-up questions, they can contact you directly.
Of course.
Thank you so much. All right, with that, it is 9 a.m. on the nose. So we're going to call it a morning. And thank you so much, Bill, for joining us and all the work you do, the leadership that you provide for DNR and Forks in general. Thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't get my actual email in there. I hit the enter too quickly, but I'm getting it in there for everyone.
Okay. William.wells@dnr.wa.gov.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. There it is. Thank you so much, Bill. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.